Life a million years ago was a time when the world was still wild, untamed, and full of secrets. The forest stretched endlessly across the continents, filled with mist and strange echoes of life that had survived countless ages. Towering ferns grew higher than trees, rivers flowed through lands untouched by any tool, and the wind carried the scent of raw earth and living wilderness. In those forgotten days, humans were still learning to survive, primitive, fragile, yet fiercely determined. They did not have words to name the things that could kill them, but they learned through pain, through hunger, and through the wisdom carved by death. In a dense, rain-soaked forest stood a small band of early humans, about 20 in all. They were wanderers, hunters, and gatherers who followed the seasons. The forest around them was alive with the calls of giant birds and the distant roars of saber-toothed beasts. Their shelters were made of branches and animal hides, their fire flickered weakly in the damp night, and their greatest strength was not in their bodies but in their will to keep living. The leader of this small tribe was a man named Oric, strong, broad-shouldered, with deep scars on his arms from battles with wild animals. His mate, Lura, was wise and brave, often guiding the others in finding edible roots and fruits. But the forest they had entered was new to them, darker, thicker, and full of strange plants they had never seen before. Among the moss and fallen trees grew mushrooms unlike any they had known. They glowed faintly in the twilight, their red and orange caps gleaming like embers after rain. The air around them had a strange sweetness that lured even the cautious. Food had become scarce. For days, the tribe had found no big game. The berries were gone, and the nuts were few. Hunger whispered in their bellies like a cruel spirit. When the children cried at night, their mothers looked toward the glowing mushrooms and wondered if the forest had offered them a gift. Lura, with her keen eyes, hesitated. She remembered the old stories, gestures and grunts passed from elders, warning that some gifts of the earth were death disguised in beauty. But hunger silenced caution, and the tribe began to gather the mushrooms. They roasted them over the weak fire, their aroma filling the camp. Oric took the first bite. The taste was bitter, yet oddly pleasant. Others followed, and soon laughter echoed through the trees. For a short while, it felt like joy had returned, their empty stomachs full, their spirits lifted. But before dawn, the laughter turned into screams. The first to fall was a young boy, barely old enough to walk. His skin grew pale, and he vomited violently. Then the others, one by one, doubled over in agony. The fire still burned, flickering over faces twisted in pain. Lura screamed for Oric, clutching her belly. The mushrooms that had seemed so harmless now unleashed their hidden venom. Some tried to drink water from the stream, but their throats burned as if fire lived inside them. The forest, which had seemed so welcoming, now stood silent, watching their suffering. By morning, half the tribe was dead. The others lay weak, barely breathing. Oric sat among the bodies of his people, his face covered in ash and tears. He looked at the mushrooms scattered near the fire, the bright red caps now blackened by the flames, and realized the forest had tested them. It was not cruelty, but nature's law. Eat without knowing, and pay the price. He buried the dead with his hands, marking the place with stones. The cries of scavenger birds echoed in the distance. For many days, the survivors could not move. Their bodies were weak, and fear took root in their hearts. The memory of those mushrooms haunted them. Even the sight of similar plants filled them with dread. But nature has a strange way of teaching. It gives pain so that knowledge may be born. From that tragedy, Lura learned to test food with caution. She began to crush small pieces of any new plant, rubbing it on her skin or tongue to see if it caused burning. If it did, they left it. If animals avoided it, they did the same. It was the beginning of knowledge, the first steps of primitive science born from suffering. As the moons passed, the tribe recovered and moved on, leaving behind the cursed forest. Yet, fate had more lessons to teach. They wandered into colder lands where snow fell, and food once again became scarce. Oric carried the memory of the mushrooms like a scar on his soul. When other tribes met them, he warned them through gestures and mimicry. He showed the sign of the glowing red cap and the dying gesture, teaching without words. Across generations, that warning passed from group to group, forming the early roots of human caution, of wisdom shared in silence. One evening, when the tribe had camped near a wide river, they saw a herd of ancient elephants, massive, woolly creatures with long curved tusks. Hope surged through them, meat enough for all. Oric and the hunters prepared their stone-tipped spears. They tracked the herd for hours, moving through icy wind and thick snow. But fate was cruel. The ground beneath one hunter gave way, a hidden swamp of frozen mud, and he vanished with a cry. The others pulled him out, his body covered in filth and fungus that clung like leeches. Lura noticed something strange on his skin, small patches of dark mold that grew overnight, spreading like poison. The man grew feverish and soon stopped breathing. That was when they began to understand. Danger came not only from claws and teeth but from things too small to see, from the silent growths that fed on the living and the dead. They began to burn their dead, believing fire purified the sickness. It was the birth of ritual, of fire as protection, not just warmth. The deadly mushrooms had opened their eyes to the unseen dangers of the world. Seasons changed again. Children who survived grew stronger, wiser. They learned to smell danger, to recognize which plants were kind and which were cruel. Some mushrooms, they discovered, could heal wounds when crushed and placed on cuts, others could stop pain. Lura found that one gray mushroom, though bitter, helped Oric's fever when boiled in water. Slowly, knowledge grew from tragedy. What once almost destroyed them became part of their survival. One night, as lightning split the sky, Oric looked toward the forest they had once fled from. He felt no hatred now, only understanding. The earth had its laws. It gave and took, but never lied. Those who learned to listen survived, those who didn't were claimed by silence. Around the fire, he told the young ones the story of the deadly mushrooms, using gestures and sounds. He pointed to his scars, to the sky, to the fire. His eyes carried the message, beware beauty, for it may hide death. The children watched him in awe, their faces lit by the flames, absorbing the tale that would be passed for generations. The story of survival was becoming the story of humankind itself. As thousands of years passed, the descendants of Oric's tribe spread across valleys and plains. The memory of the glowing mushrooms turned into myth, spirits of the forest, they called them. Some tribes painted them on cave walls, red circles with black centers, surrounded by symbols of death and fire. These drawings were not mere art, they were warnings carved into stone, messages to those who would come after. They said, "The earth feeds, but it tests." Far in another land, another tribe stumbled upon the same species of mushroom. The forest there was damp and ancient, covered in a thick green canopy. Among them was a young woman named Senna, curious and fearless. She had heard stories of death mushrooms but doubted them. When hunger came, and she saw the glowing caps, she decided to test them. She cooked them carefully, mixing them with roots, believing fire would kill their poison. She ate and waited. Hours passed, and nothing happened. Encouraged, she gave them to others. For days, they ate without harm, believing the tales were lies. But the danger of the mushrooms was cunning. Some varieties did not kill immediately. They destroyed slowly, burning the liver from within. One by one, her people began to sicken, their eyes yellow, their bodies weak. Senna realized too late that death had only been patient. She begged the forest for forgiveness, burying her people under stones. From then on, she became the watcher of plants, teaching others which ones to avoid. Her legend grew, a guardian spirit in stories told by firelight. The mushrooms had once again taught the price of ignorance. Over time, early humans began to group plants into memory, those that nourished, those that healed, and those that killed. This was the first form of science, the first catalogue of nature written not in books but in blood and memory. Even the animals seemed to know. Monkeys avoided bright mushrooms, wild pigs sniffed and turned away. Humans began to watch animals closely, learning from them. They saw how birds avoided certain berries, how deer licked only certain mosses. Nature itself became a teacher, silent but clear. As ages rolled on, the fear of the deadly mushrooms shaped human instinct. They learned to trust their senses, the smell of rot, the sting on the tongue, the color of danger. That instinct still lives in us today, buried deep in our genes, whispering caution when we see something too bright, too strange, too beautiful to be harmless. The descendants of Oric and Lura spread far and wide. They built shelters, tamed fire, and hunted mammoths. Yet the lessons of the forest followed them. In every tribe, Stories were told, of glowing fungi that lured the hungry, of sickness that came from greed, of wisdom that came from pain. These stories were not just about food, they were about survival itself, about respecting what we do not understand. That respect became the seed of spirituality, the belief that all things, even plants and stones, had power. In a cave by a great river, a shaman sat by the fire, grinding dried mushrooms into powder. He had learned that a small amount, mixed with herbs, brought visions, dreams of ancestors, of the spirits of the forest. He used them carefully, with reverence, never for hunger, only for knowledge. Thus, from poison came power, from death came discovery. The deadly mushrooms that once nearly destroyed humanity became the first doorway to the unseen world, to faith, to fear, and to awe. As millennia passed, the world changed. Forests shifted, animals vanished, new lands rose from the sea. But the bond between humans and nature deepened. Every plant, every stone, every creature became part of their understanding. The deadly mushrooms remained in their stories, reminders of how fragile life is, and how easily ignorance can bring death. When early humans finally learned to speak, to give names to things, the first names they gave were to those that fed them, and those that killed them. One evening, many thousands of years later, a small child sat by her mother near the fire. The mother, old and wise, told her the tale of the glowing mushrooms. The child's eyes widened with wonder and fear. Did they really kill people? She asked. The mother nodded slowly, pointing to the forest. Yes, child, but they also taught us to see, to smell, to listen to the earth. Without them, we would still be blind. The fire crackled, sparks rising into the night like tiny spirits returning to the stars. The story of the deadly mushrooms is not just the story of poison. It is the story of awakening, the birth of awareness in the human mind. It marks the moment when our ancestors realized that life was a balance, between hunger and caution, between curiosity and respect. The mushrooms were both enemy and teacher. Through their danger, humans learned humility. Through suffering, they gained wisdom. And through loss, they discovered the first truth of existence, that every living thing holds both life and death within it. Even now, in the forests of our modern world, mushrooms grow, silent, ancient descendants of those same deadly kinds. Scientists study them, naming their poisons, classifying their species. But in their beauty still lies mystery, the same silent warning that whispered to Auric and Lura a million years ago, that the world is alive with secrets, and knowledge is the difference between survival and extinction. Life a million years ago was cruel and beautiful. Every day was a test. Every mistake had a price. Yet, from those struggles, humanity was born, not just as a creature that walked upright, but as one that thought, remembered, and learned. The deadly mushrooms almost killed the primitive humans, but in truth, they also helped create us. Their poison became our wisdom. Their death became our story. And so, even now, when we walk in a forest and see a red mushroom glowing after rain, something ancient stirs in our blood, a whisper from the dawn of time. It says, remember,